Grand opening, grand closing. Welcome, my friends, my family, my fellow gamers. It's your only friend in these YouTube streets, PlayStation77. And I got a pretty interesting video for all of you. It's very interesting. It starts with this headline. Sony says it would withhold PlayStation 6 information from Activision if the Microsoft deal goes through. Interesting, right? Interesting headline, right? Let's first explain what that means, right? Because many people think that it's, oh, wait a minute, but Sony gives dev kits to Microsoft for Minecraft and Elder Scrolls Online and all this other stuff. That's not what the point of that statement is. The point of that statement is Sony, if Microsoft does acquire Activision Blizzard King, primarily Activision because of Call of Duty, they will not get advanced inside information about the PlayStation 6 or any console thereafter. They will not be part of the group, of the third party group that usually chimes in. You know, that initial development built up stage, right? They're not going to be part of that group no more. They will be excluded from that group because they now are owned by Microsoft. So all those little secrets and details of the initial stages of development, what they want, Sony does not want Microsoft to have access to that information. Now, this is where it's interesting, right? It says here, and I'll read it from the tweet. In the FTC versus MSABK deposition, PlayStation chief Jim Ryan said that if deal closes, Sony couldn't tell Activision about its next console. Is then asked about Sony working with Mojang, Minecraft, after MS bought them. Discussion redacted, but Ryan says it supports this concern. According to Ryan, PlayStation working with Mojang, the Microsoft-owned developer who makes Minecraft, actually supports this concern. Because of the redacted nature of the comment, however, there is no real way to work out how PlayStation's work with Mojang supports Ryan's new concerns over Microsoft. And I said to myself, hold on. Let's piece this together. Let's go back. Let's start with something. When did Microsoft buy Mojang? Well, here's the article. Microsoft has acquired Minecraft for $2.5 billion. This article was September 15th, 2014. I'm like, all right. Microsoft bought Mojang in 2014. I could have sworn the PlayStation launched in 2013. That's the day, November 15th. So, an Xbox One X launched in November 2022 of that year as well. So I'm like thinking, Jim Ryan said working with Mojang, Microsoft-owned developer who makes Minecraft, actually supports this concern. So Jim Ryan has a concern with Activision that when owned by Microsoft, if they were to provide all the information about the PlayStation 6, then by right, Microsoft has that information. And Mojang supports that theory or that situation. But the problem is the consoles, PlayStation 4 was already out. So what information through Mojang did Microsoft have access to that they weren't supposed to when the consoles wasn't out? You want to know the answer? The PlayStation 4 Pro, which didn't get released until 2016. Mojang knew that Sony was in the works, probably the early stages, right? But all third parties probably knew Sony's plan, so they could prepare and get ready for it. You know, may not have the specs locked down. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Maybe it was some anticipation. But Mojang knew that this was coming. And when Microsoft bought Mojang in 2014, guess what information Microsoft now has? That Sony's doing a mid-gen refresh. So guess what they do as a last minute, we can't let this happen. They launched the Xbox One X. They planned for the Xbox One X. That's why it came out a year later. That is why Xbox, when they launched the One X, they were so ballsy about it. That's why they knew, before we even knew the specs or anything about the Pro, they were coming out the world's most powerful console, true high fidelity VR. That's another piece of information. Why did Microsoft say true high fidelity VR? Well, granted, VR was launched already in 2016. But why would they plan their console to do high fidelity VR? Why? Because they knew what Sony was planning to do. They knew by right of purchasing Mojang that Sony was releasing mid-gen refresh and that console was going to help VR, with better graphics. I didn't personally experience PS4 Pro in VR, but everybody who did told me that it is a better experience as compared to the base PS4. Which is why you see Phil Spencer at one point claiming true high fidelity VR. He's just he pretty much, his sales pitch of the One X is just simply saying better than the PS4 Pro, simply because he knew about the PS4 Pro. And Sony realized this. So arguably, the only reason the One X even came out was because they didn't have a choice. They probably had no plans on releasing an Xbox mid-gen refresh until they saw Sony was doing it. And they had to react. It now makes sense why the One X wasn't really supported. And everybody says that. Had no big launch games, no first party to truly take advantage of the One X. It was nothing. It was just pretty much better versions of third party, but nothing really with an oomph to justify its existence. In terms of first party, like no games, launching. And it makes sense because they never had an in-depth plan to make a mid-gen refresh. So they literally just found out Sony's playbook by right of purchasing Mojang, and they reacted. This just further proves that at this point, Xbox has staff that simply don't know what they're doing. Between this, and then we come to find out that Xbox Series S is actually the next gen platform, and the Series X was just the mid-gen refresh, but they decided just to move it up ahead to day one. That's a separate topic in of itself. But this right here, I see why Sony will not give information to Activision if the deal goes through. Because Microsoft, when they try to do their own thing, they have no vision. Notice the Xbox Series S and the Xbox Series X was their true vision. They didn't have access to information on what PlayStation did. Because you best believe, if they found out on what Sony was actually doing with the PlayStation 5, they would have not done the Xbox Series S, Xbox Series X. They would have opted for their console to be more like the PS5. Much faster hard drive, focus on the hardware, less on the tools. Because I told people, with this whole RDNA 2.0, all this stuff, I said, people, listen, PlayStation has a great relationship with AMD. In fact, I might even argue I could make the case a better relationship than what Xbox has with AMD. Mainly because of Lisa Su, who is the CEO of AMD. Now, if you don't know anything about Lisa Su, she used to work for IBM. Guess who's the mother of the cell processor that is built into the PlayStation 3? Lisa Su. She was one of the people that developed the cell processor. It was an IBM and Sony joint venture. So Sony has a long-standing history and relationship with her. Now, if you have such great history with AMD, don't you think Sony knows all these tools that AMD has? VRS, mesh shaders, all that stuff. So why did Sony opted for some tools, but not for the rest? And keep in mind, Sony has some of the best developers in the world. Naughty Dog, Santa Monica. You know? Insomniac. Sucker Punch. Polyphony Digital. The list goes on. They have Gorilla, who builds their own engine. Amazing quality developers that know software, that knows tools, that knows how to make great games with the tools and all that stuff. So if they were cool, we're not going with the full suite or whatever, you have to ask yourself, what did they know that Xbox didn't? This was really interesting. Microsoft really has no idea what they're doing. They really only made the One X because of hidden information that just came by right of purchasing Mojang. You know what I'm talking about. Minecraft developers. Unbelievable. You let me know what you think. Hit up the comment section. Does this surprise you? Surprise me. I'll see you in the next video. I'll discuss this whole ordeal of Xbox Series S is actually the next generation platform for the Xbox brand.